In a city where wealth screams from every rooftop, she had only silence and broken shoes. Zainab was a brilliant student in a world built for the rich. She gave her last meal to a beggar no one even saw, not knowing he was a billionaire, in hiding, running from a past soaked in power and blood. The sun burned like a forge over the sprawling rooftops of Lekilagosa city, where glass towers kissed the clouds, while the streets below wept with forgotten souls. Amid the opulence of designer-clad elite, where air-conditioned SUVs glided over roads paved more with ambition than asphalt, lived a girl named Adaiz. She walked with weary shoes and hopeful eyes, weaving through a world that didn't seem made for her. Arais was 23, a final-year student of accounting at a prestigious private university where tuition alone could feed a village for years. Her scholarship paid for classes, but not for food, not for comfort, not for the dignity she'd left behind in Enugu when her father's transport business collapsed like a house of cards. Her mother now hawked pepper at Oyingbo Market, and her little brother shined shoes beside a gas station. Every kobo she earned from braiding classmates' hair under her hostel staircase went to feeding them back home. Still, Adaize smiled often, with cracked lips, but with warmth that lit even the coldest hearts. She wrapped her neck daily with a worn red scarf, her late father's gift, still faintly smelling of diesel and memories. In a university where luxury dripped from every student's wristwatch, her red scarf was both armor and identity. It was on a sweltering Thursday afternoon that she first saw him, the beggar. He sat on the pavement outside. The palms, the city's pride, a mall where fountains danced to Afrobeat rhythms and security guards chased away anyone who didn't look the part. He was barefoot, dreadlocked, and clad in rags that smelled of rain and smoke. He played a battered guitar, stringed with copper wire, singing old Igbo folk songs that haunted the bones. But there was something in his voice, deep, velvety, aching. The way his fingers glided over strings suggested a man who had once touched gold, and his those eyes were filled with galaxies. They didn't beg, they observed, watched, waited. She passed him 3 days in a row. Never giving money, she had none to spare but always leaving behind half her lunch wrapped in banana leaves. Plantains one day, moi moi the next, beans and gari the third. He never spoke, just nodded, his lips twitching like a man unused to kindness. By the 4th day, he spoke. "Why do you feed a man who cannot feed you back?" She had stopped, taken aback. "Because I know what it is to be hungry and unseen." That was the beginning. She learned his name was Obinna, or at least that's what he said. He never told her where he came from, nor why he looked too clean for a street rat, and spoke with the diction of an Ivy League graduate. His guitar had the name Jude W. carved beneath the fretboard, but she never asked why. He had a way of making silence feel like conversation. And so it became routine. After classes, before rushing to her part-time hairdressing job, she would sit with Obinna and eat together. They talked about books, jazz, ancestors, heartbreak. He quoted Soyinka and Achebe, and sometimes hummed Bob Marley. Once he made her laugh so hard she spilled Zobo all over her white blouse. Another time he sang her late father's favourite hymn, and she wept quietly, cradled in his stranger's arms. But the city whispered. People stared. "What is a girl like you doing with someone like him?" Her roommate hissed. Even her professors frowned at her behavior. "You ruin your future consorting with madmen," one warned. She didn't care. Something about Obina felt truer than the designer bags and gold-plated phones her classmates flaunted. Around him, she was not the poor girl trying to survive. She was Adai's alive, real, heard. What she didn't know, what no one could have guessed, was that Obina was not who he seemed. Under those rags lay a secret so grand, it would soon shake her world to its roots. They say Lagos speaks in whispers, not words. It murmurs through honking danfos, crackling radios, and the soft rustle of wind slipping between skyscrapers. And on that Friday afternoon, as Adis returned to her usual place by Obina's side, the city whispered something she couldn't quite understand, a shift, a tremor in her path. "Today, you look like sorrow dressed you," Obina said, setting aside his guitar. Adais gave a tired laugh. "Exams are near. My landlord is threatening to throw me out. My mum just texted that Uchumi little brother has malaria and we don't have enough for proper treatment." Obina's eyes darkened. "Have you eaten?" She shook her head, too proud to admit she hadn't since morning. In a swift, almost theatrical movement, Obina reached under the dirty mat he sat on and pulled out a loaf of bread and a bottle of malt. "From a kind stranger," he said, placing them before her. She hesitated. "But this is your meal." He leaned back, voice steady. "And now it is yours." There was something magnetic in the way he gave without hesitation. Unlike the fake generosity she'd seen in campus circles where people donated only if Instagram was watching, Obina gave like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she deserved to be full, even if he stayed hungry. They sat in silence, sharing bread. Around them, Lagos lived its usual madness. Rich kids in designer shoes walked by with contempt on their faces, whispering behind manicured nails. That girl, Adazeshi's lost it, sitting with a beggar like they're Romeo and Juliet. Maybe she's doing it for pity likes, TikTok trend or something. But she didn't care. That day, as the sun began to lower behind the horizon, Obina told her a story. "Once upon a time," he said, plucking gently at his guitar strings, "there was a prince who grew tired of the palace. Gold bored him, diamonds were dull. So he disguised himself as a beggar and went out to find someone who could love him without knowing he was royalty." Adaize smiled. "Sounds like a Nollywood movie." "Perhaps. But what if life imitates stories?" She laughed. "If you're a prince, then I must be a queen without a kingdom." "You are," he replied without missing a beat. "And the world just hasn't crowned you yet." It was the first time someone had seen her beyond her struggles. Not as a charity case, not as a pretty face with empty pockets, but as someone worth more than circumstance. That night, when she returned to her cramped hostel room, tears slipped silently onto her pillow. Tears. For her brother, for her mother, for the cruel twist of life that forced her to wear resilience like skin. But amid the tears, she smiled, because someone somehow had made her feel like she mattered. Meanwhile, Obina watched her leave from the shadows. When she disappeared around the corner, he rose. With slow, purposeful steps, he walked past the gated mall and down the alley where a black Range Rover with tinted windows waited. The driver stepped out immediately. "Sir, everything all right?" Obinna, now walking tall, his accent suddenly crisp and British inflected, nodded. She's the one. But not yet. Not until I know she loves me for who I am not, for what I have. He glanced at his own reflection in the SUV window, his face now scrubbed clean of street dust, dreadlocks tied back neatly. There was a quiet storm in his eyes, one of purpose, of pain, of penance. For Obinna wasn't just a billionaire. He was the lost heir of one of Lagos's wealthiest families, a business empire built on oil, tech and real estate. But power had cost him everything. Betrayal had taken his brother. Greed had nearly taken his soul. Pretending to be poor was not a game for him. It was atonement, redemption, and perhaps, through Adaze, a path to something true. But time was not a luxury they had. Others were watching men in suits with cold eyes and colder intentions, men who wanted him dead. There's something unsettling about loving someone you know so little about. A person who appears from nowhere, who never speaks of family, never shares old photos, who laughs easily but never cries, and whose name might be borrowed. Yet every day, Adaze found herself drifting closer to Obinna, like a leaf drawn toward a river's current, gentle, inevitable, dangerous. A week had passed since they began sharing meals. On campus, whispers became mockery. One evening, while she walked to class, a group of girls mimicked her, singing, "Adaze and her ragged prince! Maybe he'll give you a castle made of trash!" She clenched her jaw, said nothing. What could she say? That her heart beat like a talking drum every time she heard his voice? That when she closed her eyes at night, it was his face she saw? Not the looming tuition fees or the landlord's threats. That afternoon, she waited for Obinna outside the mall. He was late. The guitar was missing. The spot where he always sat was empty. A cold wave passed through her chest. She waited an hour, then two. Her eyes scanned the busy street, her mind spiraling. What if he's sick? Arrested? Dead? A hand touched her shoulder. She turned, startled. It was him. He looked different. No guitar. A clean t-shirt, still barefoot, but there was a nervous glint in his eyes she hadn't seen before. "Where were you?" she asked, breathless. "I had things to do." "Things?" He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a small brown envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." She did. Inside was a stack of crisp naira, noticed-in 1,000 naira. Maybe more. She looked up, confused. "Obinna, where did you get this?" "A friend owed me. Take it." "No," she whispered, pushing it back. "I'm not here for your money. I sit with you because Her voice caught. "Because I care." His face softened, but he didn't smile. "I know, but use it for Uche's medicine, please." She stared at the envelope. A storm of pride and gratitude warred in her chest. Eventually, she nodded. "Just don't do anything dangerous, okay?" He chuckled. "I sit on concrete and sing folk songs. What danger could find me?" But that night, danger did find him. As Adize lay asleep, dreaming of strange castles and red scarves, Obinna stood in an abandoned warehouse in Ikoyi, surrounded by men in black suits and tighter frowns. "You've been gone too long, Jude," said the tallest of them. "That name doesn't belong to me anymore," Obinna replied coolly. "Your father's will is about to be read. You're the only living heir. Come back. I told you I'm not ready. You think hiding among the poor will wash the blood off your hands? The man sneered. We all lost something when your brother died. But you can't run forever. Obina's jaw tightened. I'm not running. I'm healing. Meanwhile, the company crumbles. The vultures are circling. If you don't come back soon, there may be nothing left for you or your mysterious little girlfriend. Obina's blood ran cold. Leave her out of this. A cruel smile danced across the man's lips. Then make a choice. By Sunday. With that, they vanished into the night, leaving Obina alone beneath the flickering light of an old bulb that buzzed like an angry mosquito. He closed his eyes, the weight of the world pressing on his chest. He had fallen in love, but love, in his world, came with a cost, and he wasn't sure Adais could afford it. Sunday arrived, cloaked in tension. The streets of Lekki were quieter than usual. Church bells rang through the air, and gospel songs floated from windows lined with lace curtains. Families gathered over steaming pots of jollof rice and fried goat meat, laughter echoing between apartment blocks. But inside Adais, there was no peace. Obina hadn't shown up for 2 days. She'd waited. At the mall, by the mango tree near the BRT station, even at the bus stop beside his favourite Akara cellar. Nothing, no word, no song. Her calls went unanswered, though she realised, shamefully, that she didn't even have his real number, just a second-hand WhatsApp contact she couldn't trace. That afternoon, with her red scarf tied tight around her head like a crown of questions, she did something bold, maybe foolish. She went looking for him in the only place she hadn't dared, the streets. The underbelly of Lagos wasn't like her university or the shiny malls. Here, the smell of roasted corn mixed with sewage. Children chased kites made from nylon bags. Men with hungry eyes watched her as she passed. She found his usual spot empty again. Then she heard it, softly, almost as if the wind itself hummed it a tune. Her father's hymn played faintly, imperfectly, from an alley 2 blocks down. She ran toward it, and there he was. But not the Obina she knew. This man stood tall, clean-shaven, his dreadlocks gone. He wore a fitted native kaftan embroidered with silver threads. Around his wrist gleamed a designer watch. He was speaking urgently into a phone, pacing. She froze. Time stopped. He turned and their eyes locked. The guitar leaned quietly beside a silver Lexus parked behind him. Adesa. You lied to me, she whispered, barely breathing. Who are you? He stepped closer, pain flashing in his eyes. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell. Same thing. Silence stretched between them like rope about to snap. I needed to know if someone could see me. Not the money, not the family name, just me. Do you know what I gave up to sit with you? She snapped, voice shaking. My dignity, my reputation. People mocked me. Lecturers looked at me like I was cursed. But I didn't care because I thought you were honest. I was. No, she said, her voice rising. You were hiding. Obina's voice broke. I've lost everything before. My brother died protecting me from a rival company takeover. The media spun it into lies. My father disowned me for leaving the empire behind. I became a ghost in my own life, so I came here to disappear. And then I met you. Adesa swallowed the lump in her throat. And now what? You just go back to your palace and pretend none of this mattered? His voice dropped to a whisper. I want you to come with me. She blinked. Come where? To the reading of my father's will. It's today. You should be there. Why? Because whatever I inherit, I want to share it with you. She shook her head slowly. You still don't get it, do you? And with that, she turned and walked away, her red scarf fluttering behind her like a wounded flag. Obina didn't chase her. He simply stood, watching her disappear into the same streets that had once swallowed him whole. The next morning was heavy with rain. The skies wept over Lagos like a mother grieving. Fat droplets drummed on rusted rooftops, on the gleaming bonnets of luxury cars, on the heads of vendors covering their goods with old tarps. The city slowed, but it did not stop. Lagos never stopped. Adese sat on the edge of her hostel bed, staring at her phone. No new messages, no calls. The red scarf, soaked from yesterday's storm, hung on a nail, drying like a broken flag. She had told herself she was done. Done with him. But her heart didn't believe it. She replayed his words in her head. Whatever I inherit, I want to share it with you. But Adese hadn't fallen in love with a man offering wealth. She had fallen for the barefoot singer, the one who shared bread, not promises, who laughed like music and cried through strings, the one who listened. She missed him. And yet, something deeper stung inside her. Why didn't he trust me with the truth from the start? Was love not trust? She stepped out into the rain anyway. Not for him, for herself. Across town, Obina sat in a vast, cold room inside the family estate in Banana Island. A polished mahogany table stretched before him, surrounded by men in suits who only smiled when the cameras rolled. His late father's lawyer, a slim man with gold-rimmed glasses and an accent thick with foreign years cleared his throat. According to Chief William's will, the company shares, assets and holdings shall be transferred to his firstborn son, Obina Jude William Supon, confirmation of re-entry into the family trust. Obina's jaw tightened. The man he once called father had left him billions, but only if he agreed to live again as the obedient heir. The room waited for his answer. Obina stood. He looked each man in the eye. I will accept the inheritance, he said, but I will not play your game. Gasps filled the room. What do you mean? One uncle demanded. Obina stepped back. I will take the wealth and use it to build what matters. Schools, hospitals, community centers, and I will name them after the people who died because of this family's greed. You ungrateful. I watched my brother die so you could sign more oil deals. I buried my friend in a public cemetery because you said his name stained our reputation. I walked the streets as a beggar because you made being human feel like a crime. The lawyer's pen stopped. Silence wrapped the room like chains. Obina looked down at the document. He signed it. And just like that, he became the most powerful bachelor in Lagos. But the power tasted like ashes. Meanwhile, Adese walked to the church where her father had once sung in the choir. It was empty. Rain tapped on stained glass like fingers, drumming for answers. She dropped to her knees and prayed not for money, not even for love, but for peace. Peace from the ache in her chest. Peace from the voice that whispered, "What if he really loved you?" Just as she stood to leave, an old woman hobbled in with a cane and a smile made of rivers. "Child," the woman said gently, "why do you cry like the world has ended?" Adias blinked. "Do I know you?" "I know your spirit. It is loud, too loud to be ignored." They sat. The old woman listened as Adias poured out everything, the love, the lies, the scarf, the bread, the prince dressed in rags. When she finished, the woman touched her chest. "Love does not arrive perfect, my daughter. It comes raw, scared, and wrapped in mystery. But it is not love if it hides forever." "So what do I do?" The woman smiled. "If he is a king worth keeping, he will find you again this time without the crown." And with that, she left as quietly as she'd come, her cane clicking like a drumbeat of destiny. That evening, the skies cleared. The sun returned, soft and golden, and as Adaiza walked back to her hostel, something caught her eye. A street corner performance, a familiar guitar, a familiar voice, but not in rags. Obina stood under the golden glow of a lamppost, dressed simply but clean. No luxury watch, no SUV, just him, and her red scarf in his hands. He sang, "When I had nothing, you gave me bread. When I had no name, you gave me worth. Now I have it all, but still I kneel before you." People gathered, phones recorded, but he looked only at her. When the song ended, he stepped forward. "I'm sorry," he said, holding out the scarf, "for not trusting you sooner, for thinking I had to test you when you already passed every test life threw at you." She said nothing. "I don't want to build empires," he whispered. "I want to build a life with you." Tears slipped down Ardieza's cheek. Not because he was rich, not because he sang beautifully, but because, for the first time, he had taken off the mask. She stepped forward and wrapped the red scarf around his neck. "Then stop kneeling," she said softly. "We walk together." And in that moment, beneath the watching crowd and fading sunset, they held each other not as beggar and student, not as billionaire and beauty, but as two broken people choosing love anyway. For a while, everything seemed golden. The kind of golden that Lagos sunsets gave after rain, the kind that made even broken rooftops shine like royal crowns. Adaize and Obina, now reunited, walked the streets no longer as strangers or shadows, but as two people finding joy in the simple things. They still ate roasted corn on the curbside. They still listened to drummers in the park. They still laughed like they had no history. Even though they did, word spread quickly. "The street beggar is a billionaire. Obina Williams, son of the late chief, returns with a campus girl as his queen." Some praised Adaize's loyalty. Others called her a gold digger who got lucky. But she had learned to silence the noise. Love, she realized, was not about proving yourself to the world. It was about being seen in your entirety and still being chosen. Obina moved back into his father's estate, but refused the luxuries. Instead, he turned one of the guest houses into a shared workspace for young tech talent. He employed former area boys to clean and maintain the grounds, paying them wages that allowed their sisters to go to school. He changed. Or maybe he just became who he always was. Adaize began tutoring underprivileged students in math and finance. She told stories about compound interest the way griots told tales of Anansi, the spider colourful, alive. The children adored her. They were becoming something real. Not perfect, but real. Until the night of the gala. Obina's company had officially reopened under new leadership. The event was hosted in the grand ballroom of a five-star hotel in Victoria Island. Cameras flashed. Celebrities graced the red carpet. There were champagne towers and gold leaf canapes, the kind Ades didn't know how to pronounce. She wore a dress Obina had picked for her elegant emerald green, hugging her body with grace. Her red scarf was tied as a head wrap, bold and regal. Obina looked at her like she held the stars. "You're nervous," he whispered. "I'm out of my world," she said with a shy smile. "Then let me build you a new one." But the world wasn't ready to let them be. Across the ballroom, a woman approached, tall, light-skinned, dressed in diamonds. "Obina," she purred, kissing him on both cheeks. "I heard you returned from your charity sabbatical." Obina tensed. "Ngozi, you look unchanged." She turned to Adayez. "And you must be the student?" Cute. He always had a thing for broken birds. Adayez smiled politely, but inside a war stirred. After Ngozi left, Adayez asked quietly, "Who was she?" Obina looked away. "My ex-fiancé. The marriage was arranged. I ended it the night before the wedding. She didn't seem like it was over." "It is." Adayez nodded, but something fragile inside her cracked. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she suddenly saw how deep his world ran, how sharp the edges were, how easily love could get cut. That night, back in their shared apartment, far from the chandeliers and critics, she removed her scarf and sat in silence. "Do you ever wish you fell in love with someone like you?" she asked. Obina looked at her, confused. Rich, educated abroad, born into this world. He walked over and knelt beside her. "No," he said. "I fell in love with someone better. Someone who taught me that wealth means nothing if it cannot be shared. Someone who fed a stranger with her last coin. Someone who never asked me to change, but inspired me to." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but the words still lingered in the air like smoke. Was love enough to bridge the chasm between their worlds? 3 weeks after the gala, Obina's name began appearing in headlines again, but this time not as the billionaire turned philanthropist or Lagos's most eligible bachelor. Now, he was being called a fraud. Oil heir accused of embezzlement. The real Obina Williams. Anonymous sources reveal shocking secrets behind Obina's rise. The news was everywhere online, on billboards, on radio jingles, between adverts for soft drinks. On campus, Adiza heard whispers like the hiss of snakes. Students who had once called her lucky now muttered foolish under their breath. At first she didn't believe it. Couldn't. "Tell me it's not true," she said that evening, staring across the table at Obina, who sat with his elbows resting on his knees, shoulders slumped like a tree after Harmattan. "It's not," he whispered. "It's a smear campaign from inside the company. Ngosi's father still owns shares. He's trying to force me out." Adez's breath hitched. "So, she's not out of your life then?" Obina looked up sharply. "She means nothing to me." "Then why does she have the power to destroy you?" Silence. And it was in that silence that Adeza heard something louder than words. Fear. Fear that the wealth that brought them together was also the poison that could pull them apart. "I'm going to the press," Obina said suddenly. "I'll tell the truth." She touched his hand. "And what if they don't believe you? Then I lose everything again." He smiled bitterly. "At least this time I have someone to lose it with." Adayes didn't smile back. Her heart was already drowning in questions. That night, long after he fell asleep, she stayed awake, scrolling, reading, searching. And then she found an old article buried on page 6 of an obscure online journal, a report from 2 years ago. University graduate Obinna Williams allegedly funneled 200 million from his late brother's community foundation before disappearing from the corporate scene. It was old, faded, maybe even fabricated, but her chest grew tight. Why hadn't he told her? Even if it was a lie, why hadn't he said? The next morning, she confronted him. "I found this," she said, sliding her phone across the table. Obinna's face paled. "It's not true," he said quickly. "Then why didn't you mention it?" "Because it wasn't just a rumor. It was a wound." He stood and walked to the window, voice trembling. "My brother and I started that foundation together. We wanted to build schools, clinics. When he died, when he was killed, his business partners turned on me, said I mismanaged the money, that I used it to buy a house in Cape Town. I didn't. But they needed a scapegoat, and I let them. Why? Because I was tired. I wanted to disappear. I didn't want to fight anymore." She stared at him, eyes full of storm. "Don't you see, Obinna, I can't love a half-truth. I can't keep waking up wondering if I'm holding the hand of a man or a mirage." He turned, eyes burning. "I loved you when you had nothing. Can't you love me when all I have is broken?" "I did, I do, but I need you to stop running." They stood in silence. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed. Then he whispered, "What if I don't know how?" She stepped forward, placed her palm on his chest. "Then learn. For me or us." Later that week, Obinna held a press conference. Cameras rolled. He stood tall, no suit, no PR team, just a microphone and a truth long buried. "My name is Obinna Jude Williams. I was accused of crimes I didn't commit. And I chose silence because I didn't believe my voice mattered anymore. But now I know it does. Not for me, for the people who still believe in change, in redemption." He paused. "I have failed. I have hurt. But I am not a thief. I am not a mask. I am a man trying to be worthy of love." And somewhere in the crowd, behind the flashing cameras and murmuring reporters, Adayes stood, wearing the red scarf, silent, tearful, proud. The truth didn't fix everything, but it started something. It opened a door, and this time they walked through it together. The press conference changed everything, and nothing. The truth had been spoken, but in Lagos, truth alone did not guarantee freedom. Obinna's confession swept through the city like a desert, wind unpredictable, stirring, and full of heat. Some hailed him a hero, a man brave enough to bare his soul in public. Others called him manipulative, claiming the tears in his voice were calculated. Adayes watched the whirlwind unfold with quiet resolve, her faith tested not by the world's judgment, but by the shadows clinging to Obinna's past. The boardroom battles began almost immediately. Ngozi's father, Chief Danladi, launched an emergency shareholder meeting, claiming Obinna's leadership was a threat to company stability. Corporate vultures circled, hoping to snatch pieces of the empire while Obinna bled in the public eye. Adayes saw him struggle. The stress showed in the way he stopped playing guitar, the circles under his eyes, the way he stared into space when he thought she wasn't looking. "Talk to me," she said one night, after finding him staring at an old photo of his late brother, Kennechuckwaboth boys smiling, barefoot, standing beside a rural school their family once helped fund. Abina sighed. "I don't know if I can keep fighting this." "Then don't," she said gently. "Rebuild something else. On your own terms. They'll say I ran again. Let them talk. Lagos never runs out of noise." He turned to her, a faint smile returning. "You always know how to silence my storms." But even love couldn't shield them from what came next. One morning, as Adais walked into her tutoring centre, she found a sealed envelope on her desk. No name, no return address. Inside, photographs. Grainy images. Obina, with Ngozi, at a hotel bar. Smiling. A date stamped 3 days ago. Adiz's stomach twisted. She flipped the envelope. A note fell out. Men like Obina always return to their kind. She stared at the photos, her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just betrayal the sender wanted to provoke. It was insecurity, doubt, the slow unraveling of everything she had built in her heart. She took the envelope home, her hands trembling. "I found this," she said, placing it in front of Obina. His eyes scanned the contents. Colour drained from his face. "I didn't. It's not what it looks like." "Then explain it." "I was meeting her to convince her father to back off. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you." Lying to protect someone is still lying. He reached for her hand. "A days, please." She pulled away. For the first time since they met, she couldn't find the words. The room fell quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of shared silence, but the suffocating quiet of trust slipping out the door. "I need space," she said, barely above a whisper. He nodded, broken. Adaiza returned to Enugu the next day. Not to escape, but to remember. She visited her mother's pepper stall. The old woman hugged her fiercely. "My daughter," she said, holding her face, "what has happened?" "Life," Adeza said softly. "Life happened." She spent the night in the room she once shared with her brother. The walls still had posters of Wizkid and Naira Marley taped crookedly above their old mattress. The fans still squeaked. But here, the world felt slower, softer. The next day, she visited her father's grave. Kneeling before the weathered stone, she wept. "I thought I found someone, Papa. Someone who made me feel seen. But love is harder than I thought." She pressed her forehead to the gravestone. "I don't know what to do." Behind her, a gentle voice spoke. "You come back to the root to find your way forward." She turned. It was the same old woman from the church. "You again?" Adais asked, startled. The woman chuckled. "Life has a funny way of showing up where you least expect it." Adais blinked. "Are you real?" "I'm as real as truth, and truth is never far." The woman touched Adais's shoulder. "Sometimes, child, we confuse pain with punishment. But pain is just a teacher. And love? Love is the final exam." Then she walked away again, her cane tapping against the earth. Back in Lagos, Obina stood alone in his now empty apartment. Adais's scarf still hung on the wall. He held it like a relic, breathing in the scent of memories. A call came. The company board had voted. He was out, replaced by Chief Danlady's son. He sat down, numb. But strangely, he felt no bitterness, no urge to fight. He was tired. Then came a knock at the door. He opened it, on there stood a group of young men. Clean clothes, bright eyes. "Sir," one of them said nervously, "we heard you're starting something new. You once said you believed in second chances. We're ready to build with you." Obinna looked at them, then down at the scarf in his hand. He nodded. "Let's begin.